Welcome to Rust Admin Academy, where we discuss everything and anything involved with owning and operating a Rust server. We're going to talk everything from starting your very own server to modding the hell out of it and everything in between. So stay tuned, check it out. Okay guys, welcome back. We are back for part 2 of episode 1 of Rust Admin Academy. There's a couple of things in the last video that I kind of briefly touched on that I wanted to circle back to later in the video, and I ran out of time on the video because it was starting to get too long. Anyways, so there's a couple of different things that I wanted to show you guys. One of which is the organization of your batch file. So when you're looking at your batch file, you'll notice that everything is all on one line, and it's required that it appears this way in order for Windows to read your batch file properly. However, there are some things that you can do to clean it up a little bit. So what I like to do is actually break it into sections that kind of work together or make sense together or something like that. So I'm going to add server port to its own line. I'm going to do server level and seed. I'll do seed and world size on one line, and max players on another line. Okay, so this is where it gets really helpful, because sometimes your host name and your descriptions can be really long. So break this apart and leave this all in one line. Leave your server description in one line. And like I said, yours is probably going to be a lot longer than this one. I just used a real quick little blurb there just to give you guys the example, but I wanted to show you what it looks like. But anyways, so keep that all on one line, but you can break everything else down. So we're going to move this one. We can leave server identity the same. We're going to move Archon port and Archon password. No, we'll leave password there. So let's move Archon port up with server port. Doesn't really matter where you put it, but that information does have to be in there. So the way to do a line break in a batch file is, I don't know what this icon is called, but it's Shift 6. I want to call it like an egghunt goo, but I don't think that's actually what it's called. Oops. And so just make sure that you have a space at the end, so you can see my space right here, and then Shift 6. We'll call it the egghunt goo because it's kind of a funny word. Oops, wrong one. And so as you can see, this is just laid out a little bit better. And when you reload this, like if you were to restart your server, you would see that it still functions the exact same way, but visually it makes it a little bit easier to keep track of. And when you want to, like when you do a server wipe and stuff like that, or a blueprint wipe, you can just go in here and you can change these two things. You can change your world size if that's what you're into, and you can change your server seed. It just makes it a little bit easier to keep track of. Anyway, so we're going to save that because that's a usable file, and I'll keep using it for this server that we're running right here. So that's the first thing that I wanted to talk about, that I meant to circle back to on the previous video and just ran out of time. The other thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is the differences between local hosting and using a service provider. Okay, so this type of a situation that we've got going on here right now is a local host, and it works. If you're small, like your population is up to 25, maybe 30, as long as you have a decent internet connection, a local host is fine. The downside to a local host, though, is you won't be able to find your own server. When you open up Rust and search in the directory, you won't find it. So you have to do in the F1 console, you have to do client connect, your IP address, and then your port. As you've seen on the previous video, you watched me do that, but I didn't mention why I was doing that. It was because this is a local host and I have to do it that way. Okay. However, your friends will be able to find your server if they search for right here. If they search whatever server host name you have in the actual game server directory, they'll be able to find it as long as your port forwarding is done correctly. If you guys need help with port forwarding, and it can be a little bit I don't know, it's a little bit weird until you get the concept down. Then once the concept is down, it's super easy. And everyone's modems are totally different, so I can just kind of give you the broad strokes of it, but I can definitely help you out. If you want that information, just shoot a comment down below, and I'll definitely follow up with another video showing you how to do the required port forwarding for hosting a Rust server locally. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to get into is the differences between a dedicated machine versus just using renting a server, like I don't really know how to word it, but like you can go to like a website like Game Servers and just rent a Rust server. There's going to be some parameters that you select out, and you're gonna decide how many slots you want to pay for. That's how they charge it out, is by player slots. And like Game Servers, that's the latest one that I've used, and you get, I think it's 50 slots for, I think it's $8.95 a month or something like that, and that's US funds. So Game Servers, survival servers, there's tons of different service providers out there that you can use that are super simple to set up. The downside to using those is there are some limitations to what you can put in your batch file. For example, like you wouldn't be able to change your world size to bigger than 4K. You can go up to a 6K map. I think you can actually do a 6.5K map, which is massive. But with a service provider like that, it won't allow you to do that, simply because they won't provide you with the resources to run a map that big. Another downside to it is the resources that they supply you with. They are a stripped down version of a server, so very minimal RAM. You run out of memory very quickly. If you're running a vanilla server, you're not going to have a problem even if you maxed out at your 50 players. If you run a heavily modded server, however, you're going to run into issues. It might even crash when you're just loading a simple plugin, and then you got to go through a restart procedure, and it can be very time consuming and stuff like that. If you guys would like more information on those types of setups, again, just throw me a comment down below and I'll go in depth on those types of things. I still have a Game Servers account. I can still show you what I'm talking about. Now, the end all be all type of situation is to have either enough players or enough server demand to run a dedicated machine. So, and there's a couple of different places you can get a dedicated machine from. I've used OVH in the past. They're based out of Montreal, Canada. They're really strong servers. They have tons of memory, tons of processing power, as well as gigabit connections. You never run into like lag and stuff like that. They have decent DDoS protection, not amazing DDoS protection, but it is okay. I did get attacked a couple of times when I was with OVH, and they did mitigate it. It didn't crash my servers out, but it definitely hurt my servers a little bit. The end all be all, the king of service providers right now is NFO, Nuclear Fallout. They run amazing DDoS protection. They have amazing connection speeds. They have tons and tons of memory available to you, but you pay for it. Just to give you an idea, one of my dedicated boxes that I pay for, it's about, I want to say it's about 150 bucks a month US, but it's bulletproof. That server is always online. It never gets attacked offline, and but it's like everything, you get what you pay for, right? And that's on the high side of things. For beginners, that's on the high side of things, but it's strong, it's reliable. You're not going to run into any issues. So kind of a good, better, best type of situation. So good is localhost. Better would be using a server rental provider, and then the best option is having a dedicated box. And good is free. Better is, you know, $9, maybe $15, maybe $20 a month, and best is $150 to $250 a month. So, but you do get what you pay for. So, Oh, some things that I need to talk about if you're going to do a local host. You have to consider, if you're going to run this server on your personal machine, or let's say you have like an old laptop or something like that that you want to run the server on, you can, but there are some things you need to consider. Electricity, because this server needs to be running 24 hours a day. So there's power consumption there. There's bandwidth consumption. So your service provider, your internet service provider, needs to allow you to have that kind of bandwidth running all the time. Like if you have a lot of players and they're playing 24 hours a day, that's going to use up your personal bandwidth. So bear in mind, as well as with that, you have to pay attention to the fact, is there somebody else in the house watching a streaming service, or are they downloading movies, or are they using up your Wi-Fi or whatever? There's tons of other things in your house that you may not even notice that are using up bandwidth. So let's say somebody's watching a streaming service and you start noticing people in your chat are complaining about lag. That's why, because you're bottlenecked with your bandwidth. So those are just some things to think about. When you're first starting out, running a local host is a great idea. It's free, it costs you nothing. And if it's just for your friends or whatever, you're not going to run into any issues. 3 or 4 people, you're not going to run into bandwidth issues unless one of your friends is like around the world. That's definitely going to be a thing. So that's basically what I wanted to tell you guys about as far as the different types of hosting services available to you. The second part of this video that I wanted to finish covering is admin pitfalls or traps, or whatever you want to call it. Things that are going to ruin your server for you before you even get started. So there's a couple of things that no matter what, under any circumstances, does an admin ever do. The ability to fly around, it's called noclipping. The ability to noclip in a server is very tempting. So it might give you, you might want to fly in and out of other people's bases and stuff like that. I have to say, is the worst possible thing you can do. My rule for my staff and myself is the only time I'm using noclip is if I'm actively chasing down a cheater, hacker, scripter, something like that. That is the only time I will noclip. If players see you, and I'm not talking about your friends, I'm talking about like random players that are joining your server. If they see you flying around, they will immediately leave your server. They may not say anything to you, but they're thinking in their minds, this guy's an admin abuser, and they're not going to stay. Okay, so keep your noclipping down to a minimum. Only use it when you absolutely have to. If you can, use the debug camera. But do not go into other people's bases. You don't want to help yourself. You don't want to help your friends learn how to raid somebody's base quickly and easily. You know, getting directly to their TCs, getting directly to their loot. You don't want that. If you want to have a successful server, don't do this stuff. As tempting as I know it is, just don't do it. Please, I beg of you. If you want to have a successful server, don't noclip into other people's bases. I'm stressing this to you because it's important. The other thing as an admin that you're going to be tempted to do is spawning stuff in. So a couple of things to note when you're spawning stuff in. Let's say you're spawning things in for your friend, or you have a player that got raided and you feel bad for them or whatever, so you want to give them some stuff to get started back up again. Don't do it. Just don't do it. There's absolutely no reason to ever spawn things in for other players, for yourself, for your friends. There's no reason for it. The one caveat to that is, if you have a dedicated server where you just go to test builds or test out new ideas or whatever, sure, power to you, spawn everything and anything you want in. But if you're trying to build a server or build a community where you want actual players to join your server, don't spawn things in. I cannot stress this enough. Another good rule for an admin, or a moderator or anybody that's working for you is don't give away the location of other people's bases. Let's say somebody raids somebody else and that victim is like, I need to know who did this and where they are so I can get revenge on their base. Don't fall for that. You don't want to give away somebody else's location. And the easiest way to mitigate that is to say, how would you feel, talking to this player, how would you feel if I gave somebody else your base location? Well, okay, that makes sense. I wouldn't want that. Okay, so that's why I'm not going to give you this other raider's base location. It's pretty easy to mitigate. It's a pretty easy conversation to have, but it's an important conversation to have. You want them to understand why you're not doing it. You want to know that you're going to give them the same fairness that you're giving to other people. No brainer, right? But these are things that I've experienced other server owners do, and then they turn around and they wonder why their server is not populating, or people are coming in and spending 5 minutes in the server and then leaving. Like, these are all reasons why people do that kind of stuff. Okay, lastly, I want to touch more a little bit on the batch file. Like I said in the first video in episode 1, this is a very, very basic, slimmed down, just the bare minimum of what you need to have a server up and running. There are a couple of different, there's actually a ton of different commands that you can put in here. You can change if animals move, you can change if NPCs move or not. You can make it so that there's no gravity. You can make it so that there's no stability rules. You can increase how often things spawn, how many of these things spawn. It's a good way to control the amount of loot available without actually using a loot modifier, which then requires oxide, which of course we're going to get into in the next video. But if you wanted to like increase your the amount of things that spawn, this is a good line that I've come up with. And we'll put our little Exante goo on there as well. So if you add this line, this will change your spawn rate. And this is everything. This is loot piles. This is trash piles, animals, trees, nodes. It's everything. It increases the spawn density across your map, across all of the loot tables and everything like that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get more things out of each barrel. What it means is they're going to get more barrels. So it ends up doing the same thing in the end, but they still have to smack more barrels to get more stuff. It just means that there's going to be more barrels readily available and easier to find. This also increases minicopters, how often minicopters, and the density that they'll spawn at. Now, there are a couple of things that I wanted to show you guys. A lot of people really like having the scarecrows and murderers on the server, but they don't necessarily want to run the Halloween event, which is fine. You don't have to. So if you add these two lines right here, so this is saying, okay, I want the Halloween murderer population to be at 2, and what that is a maximum of 2 per square, so per 1K of your map. And then the same thing for the scarecrow population. This is at 2. If you go to like more, it might seem like too much. I think 2 is a decent balance, but like you can play around with this number all you want. You can make this number 10 if you want, and then for every square available, it can be up to a max of 10 scarecrows or murderers on that, which is going to seem like a lot. It's going to seem like a horde of murderers. And another thing I wanted to tell you guys about is you can actually do so for example, Face Punch builds, and they spend a ton of time doing different events. There's the cargo ship event at Easter time. They have the Easter event that typically happens in the morning. You can manually trigger that by doing spawn egg hunt, and you can actually see it actually happening. So it's spawning the egg hunt. Now there's nobody in this server right now, so it's not actually gonna produce any eggs on the server. If we were to log in right now, we wouldn't find any eggs because there was no players in there when the event was spawned. So if you want this to happen automatically, you're gonna have to run an Archon program, which I talked about in episode 1, and we will definitely get into in a later episode on the different types of Archon programs that you can use. And if you wanted to automate an event like this, it would have to be done through an Archon program, such as one of those. Anyways, that's going to be it. I wanted to keep this video really short, but I did want to touch on those very important things that we didn't get to in episode 1. Stay tuned for the official episode number 2, which we're going to get into actually installing oxide. We'll probably go into like the wipe processes and stuff like that, what things look like on a wipe day. And we might even touch a little bit on, there's a couple of plugins that I want to get into right away, so I'll probably get into one of those in the same episode, because they're really exciting and they're really fun for me. So I will see you guys in episode number 2. If you find these if you find these videos helpful or entertaining or whatever, smash that like button for me. I know that's what everyone says, but believe me, when it comes to the YouTube algorithms, those really help us out a lot. And as far as you as the viewer, it takes zero effort to smash that thumbs up for me, and I super huge appreciate it. And if you guys want to see future episodes of Rust Admin Academy, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you get notified as soon as I upload another video. Anyways, that's it for today. Be sure to stay tuned. The next video is incoming very, very soon. Thanks again. I super appreciate you guys stopping by. I hope you guys lasted till the end of the video. I know that some of this got a little bit dry, but it's going to start getting fun when we start dealing with oxide. So we'll see you guys later.